why Hedi Slimane should be the creative director of Gucci. And this is not to say that he will go or that he's the only option. However, I do think that he is one of the strongest options. So when it comes to Gucci, I think the first conversation we have to have is what went wrong. And then we go into why I think Hedi Slimane is the best option. So this whole issue with Gucci all started from Alessandro Michele's time at Gucci. Alessandro Michele made a ton of money from Gucci. I mean, I have a stat where Alessandro Michele took over from Frida Giannini in 2015. And at the time that he took over from Frida Giannini, the annual revenue of Gucci was 3.9 billion euros. By the end of 2015, the same year, sales were up by 5%, and the revenue in the last quarter was up 4.8% compared to the quarter before. And by the end of 2021, the sales were 9.7 billion euros. So basically, Alessandro Michele made a ton of money for the brand, loads. But because all of a sudden there was a luxury slowdown, and I think there are many different factors that led to Gucci having bad performance. I mean, there was COVID, there was an economic crisis, an energy crisis, so many things happened, right? And because they saw a downtick in revenue in not that long of a period when, Alessandro Michele was there, they tasked him with changing his aesthetic to what can be seen as almost chasing trends and going with a more minimal look that was more akin to the trends of the time when we think of things like quiet luxury. And because Alessandro Michele didn't really feel like that was his aesthetic, that was not the direction he wanted to take the brand, he decided to, leave and not do that. So of course they installed someone who would do what they wanted, which in this case was Sabato De Sarno. And it didn't really work because I think Gucci were trying to channel a sort of return to minimalism and a certain aesthetic that's more associated with the time when Tom Ford was at Gucci. But I think what a lot of these companies miss is Gucci as a brand has always been a brand that was about exuberance. It's never been about this sort of mellow, demure thing that Sabato is going for. And that is regardless of the aesthetic. Because if you think of Tom Ford, what made Tom Ford, big and famous? It was the lifestyle of Tom Ford associated with the brand, right? It was the fact that he's a sexy man in sharp suits, part of this jet set lifestyle, people that go on private jets, they drink alcohol and have a fun time, sexy dresses. There was an allure that came with Tom Ford's Gucci, but part of it was actually, him as a person, people wanting to be like him, people like wanting to be part of his life. We don't even really know anything about Sabato De Sarno, so there's no way they could channel that same energy. I think sometimes what these companies and what these business people fail to forget is it's more than the clothing that makes these designers successful. It's their persona, it's many other things. And with Sabato, whether they wanted to, replicate the same aesthetic, they didn't channel any of the persona of Tom Ford. I mean, when you think of just even things that happen, like controversial things, like most of you will remember this fashion ad where the pubes were shaped like a Gucci G, right? It's things like this that builds the mystique of a designer, whether it's the controversy or just the larger than life personality that some of these creative directors have. So all in all, it was a total failure. And I don't really think it was Sabato De Sarno's complete fault because once again, he was tasked with doing what the people at the top wanted to do. I just think that they had the wrong strategy from day one. They just didn't really know what they were doing and they didn't really know the right direction to go in, to be honest. You also need to consider that Alessandro Michele's aesthetic is very much like thrifting meets extreme maximalism. And when you're going from that aesthetic to a complete 180 and you're going back to minimalism, you need the consumers to actually have time to get used to that aesthetic. How can you expect consumers that used to buy Alessandro Michele's clothing to overnight take to Sabato? It doesn't make sense. And they really thought in their minds that they could completely change the aesthetic, but keep Alessandro Michele's customers and build new customers. That doesn't even make any sense. That literally makes no sense. So realistically, the whole thing was just a complete disaster. And it was something that, I saw from the start that it wasn't going to work. Yeah, someone's saying Tom Ford's Gucci was coked up, sexed up, glammed up 70s disco. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. This whole idea that Gucci is trying to be demure and all this sort of stuff. Tom Ford has never been that. Sorry, Gucci in general has never been that. Tom Ford was not that. Alessandro Michele was not that, just in two different ways. But Gucci is never subdued. And I think that's where they failed. Marketing wise, it was never subdued. branding wise, aesthetic wise. So I don't know what they were thinking. If Gucci is a brand that lacks house codes in the sense that so many different designers have done different aesthetics, but in terms of a house code, it has to have this level of exuberance to it. That's kind of what Gucci is. That's what it represents, especially in the modern day. So it's like they almost didn't know what Gucci represents, and they are the people that make the business decisions. A bit insane. So yeah, made no sense to me, and the writing was on the wall, at least in my opinion, from day one, to be very honest with you. And that brings us into Hedi Slimane. So to make my case as to why he is the best person, I think we first have to talk about his background in fashion, because I think it's very important. I also think he has a very strong background. So Hedi Slimane in the 90s was working as an assistant in fashion marketing at YSL. He then was installed by Pierre Bergé in 1996. You guys will probably know who Pierre Bergé is because he had a romantic relationship with Yves Saint Laurent. And then when they stopped having that romantic relationship, they remained friends, and he remained the business brains behind the brand Yves Saint Laurent and made a lot of the business decisions for Yves Saint Laurent. So anyway, in 1996, Pierre Bergé made him the ready-to-wear director of men's collections at YSL. This is when Hedi Slimane became very famous for his very skinny, slim, rocker glam aesthetic that he's till today still famous for. So that was when he started building up some noise. He then left Yves Saint Laurent. He rejected an offer actually at Jil Sander, so he could have actually been at Jil Sander. We could have seen an Hedi Slimane Jil Sander tenure, but it's something he turned down. He moved to Berlin. He had a residency for a few years before returning to fashion in 2000, and he became the creative director of Dior Menswear. He continued building noise there. He did so many different things, continued to work on a skinny silhouette, and made it a big thing in fashion, especially men's fashion, but a lot of women also wore a lot of his stuff. He was also, I think, the first menswear designer to receive a CFDA International Menswear Award, which is insane. And that was actually presented by David Bowie, which is cool because Hedi Slimane used to dress David Bowie for a lot of things, right? Then he left Dior. He eventually did return back to YSL, but this time not just doing menswear, doing both women's wear and menswear. In 2012, continued building noise there. And then, of course, more recently, he had a tenure at Celine, where he was from 2018 till last year. So he's built massive audience in fashion, and he's done so many different things. He also is quite infamous for when he goes to brands, he completely rebrands it. When he went to YSL, he changed the name to Saint Laurent. So we started going from calling it YSL to SLP, right? The same thing he did at Celine. He removed the accent or the accent, made it Celine without the accent. So that is always kind of an infamous thing that he does. And at every single brand that he's been at, he has done amazingly well. He's made all the right decisions. He's made tons of money for every company he's been at. I mean, if we talk about Dior, for example, in 2004, he is very famous for creating La Collection Privée, and he designed the bottles and also did the advertising campaigns for the fragrances. The private line for Dior is one of the most successful fragrance private lines across the whole fashion industry. And I personally am a big fan of Dior Privé. At a point, I owned 12 fragrances from this line. I think now I have maybe 7, but I have some of them with me. So I have Fève de Luce, if you guys can see it. Let me make it big. So I've got this, Fève de Luce. The light's a bit much, but this is Fève de Luce. I've got Vanilla Dior. I've got Brain Nuit. Let's see if I can hold all of these at once. I've got Eden Rock. I've got, can I still hold it? I've got Spice Blend. Okay, I can't hold all of these. Let me show you the other two I have. I've got Gris Dior and I've got Oud Ispahan. So I'm a big fan of these fragrances. I'm also quite knowledgeable about the whole line because I buy a lot of it. So people buy this line. Like, it's very, very successful. And he, of course, was the person that really pushed this line forward. And then talking about fragrances once again, in 2005, just after he launched the Privé collection in 2004, he created with Olivier Polge one of the most famous Dior fragrances, which is Dior Homme. And it's sort of like a masculine version of Iris. I actually own Dior Homme Intense, which is a fragrance that came out, I believe in 2011. But this is like supposedly a more intense version. It doesn't smell exactly the same, but it's really good. Like this beautiful Iris, fantastic. So when it comes to fragrances, he knows what he's doing. he really, really knows what he's doing when it comes to fragrances. And that, to me, is one of Kering's weak points. Serious, like severe weak points when it comes to Kering and their brands. Of course, he's famous for a lot of other things. When you think of, this is Dior Homme for people that don't know what it looks like, but when you also think of the likes of other famous products that he created for men, the first thing that comes to mind, especially at YSL, the Wyatt boots. Hedi Slimane had men dressing like rockers. He had men wearing Wyatt boots. So many people wore this at one point. It's not really as big now. I don't really see too many people wearing Wyatt boots as much anymore, but there was a point in time, like if you look here, you have Ye wearing that. You've got Harry Styles wearing, like everyone was wearing these boots. Like everyone, like Miguel, every single person was wearing these boots. Like you literally could not like miss these boots at one point in fashion. So he's famous for that. He's also famous, of course, for making his luxurious teddy bombers. So he, to be honest, single-handedly changed the face of menswear and changed the whole direction of menswear at the time. And at Celine, I think he did that, but not to the same extent as when he was at YSL and Dior, to be very honest. So Hedi Slimane just knows how to make products that sell and are desirable by many people, both women and men. He's just good at that. Every brand he's at, he makes so much money for the companies. It's insane. Like, I even have a stat from him at Celine. So when he was at Celine, during his tenure, revenue doubled to almost 2.5 billion euros, which is absolutely insane. And you need to add the context of when he was at Celine. When he was at Celine, right, he did not care about the fashion press. And I've talked about this before, but the reason why is because he's really good friends with, of course, Vogue Paris editor, former editor Emmanuel Alt. And when Vogue and Anna Wintour was doing all these Condé Nast restructurings, they got rid of her role, and Hedi Slimane was quite angry about it, so he stopped working with Vogue when he was at Celine. So Celine, you'll notice that on Vogue Runway, you don't really see a lot of the runway shows anymore. If you actually have a look, it's because of Hedi Slimane. He didn't, advertise with a lot of magazines. He didn't care about them going to his shows. He didn't care about influencers going to his shows. There was even a point in time when he wasn't even doing shows. He was just spending millions on these highly produced runway videos and campaign videos. And yet, revenue still doubled. So you're telling me that, all these brands are struggling and all of them are clamoring and trying to work with everyone. And Hedi Slimane literally is like, I don't care to work with any of these fashion publications, and revenue doubles. Like, he boycotted basically the biggest fashion magazine in the whole industry, and revenue still doubled. So if we're talking about who knows how to make money, who knows how to brand a company, and who knows how to push it forward, there's only one name, and his name is Hedi Slimane. However, all of this being said, there are still going to be some problems that arise. And of course, Hedi Slimane, even when he was at Celine more recently, part of the reason why they did so well, they got the branding correct. He worked with Lisa from Blackpink. She became essentially the face of the brand. And, outside the runway shows, you'd see people screaming all the time, "Oh my God, Lisa!" You always see these people screaming. If you watch Loic Prigent's videos, people go absolutely crazy. But this was a very, very strong and good marketing move from the brand. Very, very smart. The fragrance line, sensational. The beauty line, absolutely sensational. I mean, I have, once again, talking about like all these kind of things, right? I have Celine candles. And I love these Celine candles. The branding, the way that the packaging is, the way it's shaped, the fact that the wax is black in line with the actual case. It's sensational. I'm telling you, everything he does from a branding perspective is so good. It's honestly so good. But moving forward anyway, like I was going to say earlier, problems can arise with working with Hedi Slimane because Hedi Slimane is very difficult to work with. When he was at Celine, I remember this article came out in BOF where they were talking about how working with Hedi Slimane can be really difficult because he has his house in Saint-Tropez and he spends countless hours and company funds, ferrying samples back and forth between Paris and Saint-Tropez. And he'll look at a lot of projects. Projects will reach a certain stage. People work really hard on these projects. Then somewhere along the line, he'll just axe the project and be like, actually, I don't really want to do that. And then people's hard work essentially goes to waste. And then that's the end of it. And then, they have to do something else and have to work on a new project. So that really hurts a lot of people's self-esteem. But, a case could be made that that's actually a good thing, because Hedi Slimane's aesthetic and his, branding is so strong that he knows exactly what he wants, and he can almost tell if something will work or not. And we have proof of that because, the numbers don't lie when it comes to Hedi Slimane. He's always making money for brands. So the numbers don't lie. He doubled the revenue when he was at Celine. So whatever decisions he's making, clearly they work. Clearly they work. But another issue, of course, is royalties. Hedi Slimane is notorious for, one, having an extremely high salary. Secondly, he demands insane royalties for everything, whether that's formulations for fragrances to marketing campaigns to photography deals and all those kind of things. He demands royalties on absolutely everything. And, brands that are trying to cut corners, they might not want him there because they're like, oh, he's just too expensive. He just costs too much. But do you want to spend a lot of money and make more money? Or do you want to be penny wise and pound foolish? That's up to these companies to decide, right? Of course, like I mentioned before, another issue is if he goes to Gucci, do they want to put up with the fact that he might boycott any magazine and it's really random with him? He might ban certain journalists from coming to the shows. And how exactly will that affect the business side of Gucci long term? That might be something that they might struggle with and they might think is like a really big issue. He's also like a control freak. I am a fan that he's a control freak, but I can understand from a company perspective why they won't like that, because companies like to control their employees, right? But Hedi Slimane is very notorious for wanting control over everything, not just the clothing and what goes into the collections. Like most creative directors, it's, when are they created? How are they shown? When are they shown? That's why at Celine, their runway shows would just come out randomly. They'll just post videos randomly. There was no sort of science to it. Like, you wouldn't really know. But they still made more money. So despite all of those unorthodox ways of doing things, they still made big profits. So clearly he knows what he's doing once again. But he sometimes does the photography himself. I remember when he first went to Celine, how he removed everything that represented the past Celine, and he made the photography black and white and all that sort of stuff. And all the Phoebe Philo fans were mad. And they're like, this is not the real Celine. Celine is not supposed to look like this and all of that. And he just doesn't care. He really doesn't care. He just puts his own spin on everything from his perspective. But a question needs to be asked around whether these companies are okay with that and, whether they want that. Also, a big thing we need to mention is the lawsuit between Hedi Slimane and Kering, because, of course, this is a big thing that I've seen people saying, there's no way he's going to go to Gucci because he had a lawsuit. Most of these people, I don't think actually know anything about the lawsuit or why the lawsuit happened or what exactly the details were. So we are going to read it via fashion law and see exactly what was the root cause for Hedi Slimane suing Kering twice. So let's read through it. So it says, in a preliminary hearing in July 2016, a French labor court determined that Kering was on the wrong side of the law and that it owed Slimane the $30 million, likely a result of the fact that in accordance with French law, an employer cannot unilaterally waive a non-compete obligation unless the clause provides so. So let me just explain that. Essentially, what happened was when Hedi Slimane left YSL, he had a non-compete in his contract, which is normal, right? Normally, when you work at LVMH, you have a non-compete, which means that you have to wait a certain time period before you can go to a competitor, a brand from a competitor company like a Kering brand or vice versa. So this is nothing new. Now, as part of Hedi Slimane's non-compete, he had a stipulation in his contract that meant that as part of his non-compete, he was supposed to be paid a certain number of millions of dollars, right? Now, Kering thought they were slick and sly and decided to waive that non-compete clause so they don't have to pay him. So they were like, you can go to any brand you want. We don't mind. We've removed the non-compete. And Hedi Slimane's like, hold on a minute. In our contract, the non-compete means that you're supposed to pay me a certain amount for me to, enact this non-compete. So essentially what you're doing is by removing this non-compete, you're just not going to pay me the money that you're supposed to pay me as part of the non-compete. So of course he sued them and he won both times, which means that the court of law found that what Kering was doing was not legally right. Otherwise, he would not win in a court of law, especially not against a massive company like Kering. Kering has way more resources than Hedi Slimane. They probably have a better, legal team than Hedi Slimane, the individual. So you cannot tell me that Kering was not in the wrong there. They were literally shown to be in the wrong twice in the court of law, and Hedi Slimane won all that money. So why I don't think this is big as an issue as people are making it out to be is because if you really think about it, Kering shouldn't have an issue with Hedi Slimane personally because they were the ones that were trying to be shady. They shouldn't have an issue with the fact that he sued them twice because they were trying to just not pay him money and he got the money that he rightfully deserved. So I don't think it should be an issue. And Kering and Gucci specifically are not in any position to be, especially financially, businesses where you're supposed to leave your emotions on the table. You're not really supposed to bring loads of emotions to business because that's how you go out of business, being too emotional about things. So to be honest, they played themselves, and if they know what's good for them, they should forget about that whole saga, accept that they were in the wrong, and move forward. So that whole lawsuit shouldn't be an issue. It really, really shouldn't be an issue because it's their fault. They were the ones trying to, cheat him out of his money, and he rightfully won. So I've seen a lot of people online saying there's no way he could go back because of the lawsuit and all of that. But I don't think and in all the people that have had those takes, no one has actually mentioned the actual specifics of the lawsuits. Like why exactly he won, why exactly he sued them. They're just making it seem like he's just some problematic person that had a crazy fight with Kering and they could never forgive him because of all this stuff, right? But the Nectar man makes a strong point. Would you work for a company that tried to screw you twice? I think it depends because he won twice. So he knows if they try to do any crazy stuff, he just needs to take them to court and he's probably going to win. Especially if something is literally in the contract and they try to remove it from the contract without his permission. That just doesn't make any sense, right? So that's the crazy thing. And another big reason why that I was thinking about when I was like, oh, they really need Hedi Slimane to really do some stuff at Gucci is this story. I think more so than anything, this is one of the most important stories when it comes to Kering. The fact that, in 2023, Kering invested a lot of money in their beauty division. Now, why is this important? Most of Kering's big brands and their big fragrance lines are licensed to other big companies, whether that's L'Oreal. In the case of Gucci, Coty owns the right of the license to sell Gucci fragrances, right? Now, it makes sense why they have these deals in place because, to be honest, the fragrance game is really expensive. Like the initial investment that it takes to push your fragrances to the level of a Gucci would cost a lot of money. The initial investment would be insane in marketing, in formulation, in all this stuff. And so having the infrastructure to do all these things is super expensive. However, I'm so shocked that it took Kering until 2023 to really launch their beauty division. That doesn't make any sense to me because Kering is such a big company. If it was a smaller company, I would understand. Like it makes sense, and we're going to talk about it, why Jacquemus, has an investment from L'Oreal. That makes sense because Jacquemus does not have the resources to do it themselves. They don't. But Kering does. And so this is why Kering is now understanding if we vertically integrate our fragrance game, not only do we have control over the way it's marketed, not only do we have control over the way it looks, who creates them, we can also make maximum profits because we touch everything. So we touch every single part of the supply chain. So they are late on this, to be honest, very, very late. And now they are kind of in trouble because yes, they are, building these fragrances one by one and really fixing their beauty products. But they still have all these licensing deals that they really can't really get out of. Like I did some research and their Coty deal, the earliest it expires is in 2028, which is a while from now. So they're in trouble, at least in the short term. And of course, when it comes to these initial investments into the beauty industry, you need to also remember that Kering's strategy, and we've seen from the way that Gucci has really suffered, they think too short term, way too short term. And the issue with that is they never make long-term decisions that make sense over the long term, even if you suffer in the short term. So a smart thing to do over the long term is invest heavily in fragrances, really pump money into your beauty division, and then 5 years from now, you reap the benefits. But in the short term, you might make a loss because you invested so much into the beauty division, right? So unfortunately, because Kering is always about short-term investors, stock prices, because they care about that crap all the time in the short term, they haven't, and this is why they're so late on the beauty division, and now they're kind of stuck. Because yes, they're going to build their beauty division, and clearly you can see the intent there. The former Estee Lauder executive, Raffaella Corneglia, is the CEO of Kering Beauty, right? So they're hiring the right people. They have their eye on the ball, but it's kind of too late. It's really too late. And I don't even know how exactly they plan to wiggle out of these contracts close to the end, because some of these contracts might be hard to wiggle out of. So we'll see how that happens. But when it comes to beauty, like I've shown you guys, Hedi Slimane is the man for the job. And if they really want to get their beauty division off the ground, they need the likes of Hedi Slimane to really add that pizzazz and that spice to it, that people, to make fragrances that people actually want to buy. Because to be honest, Kering, across most of their brands, their beauty division is weak. Like compared to LVMH, their beauty division is quite terrible actually. All their brands, whether we're talking about McQueen, YSL is a brand that, you know, has a really strong fragrance line, but then they don't own the rights to sell their fragrances. It's licensed out. So there goes that one. Gucci, it's licensed out, and Gucci fragrances are not even that good anyway. People don't really care. Like people in the fragrance game, like people in the fragrance world, do not care about Gucci fragrances, I'm going to be honest. Yes, YSL Beauty does print money, but not via Kering though. I mean, Kering, obviously with these licensing deals, it's not like Kering doesn't see any of the money. They get a certain percentage of the profits. However, if they own the rights, they would make even more profit. So there's that. And a lot of their other brands like McQueen, fragrance line is limited. Balenciaga, the fragrance line is limited. So they're just in a really, really bad spot when it comes to their fragrance lines. And I just think a lot of work needs to be done there. Honestly, a lot of work really, really needs to be done there. Bigger companies tend to be much slower to respond to market demands, at least outside of fashion. Not very surprising for a bureaucratic organization. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Dior has a sensational fragrance line. I mean, I buy a lot of Dior fragrances, but Dior is LVMH, right? It's not Kering. So that's my point. Like LVMH has a really strong fragrance line and they know what they're doing. And when you look at what Kering is doing, like launching their beauty division in 2023, how late is that? And I remember after they launched their beauty division, that shortly after was when they acquired Creed. So the Bottega Veneta releases are still new to the game. And I haven't really seen, when it comes to the Bottega Veneta fragrances, I like the bottles. They're kind of unique, but I just think the marketing was weak. People aren't really, I genuinely don't think people are going to be talking about the Bottega fragrances in a few years. Like the vibe I'm getting, I don't see people talking about them. The people in the fragrance community aren't really talking about the Bottega Veneta fragrances the same way that they talk about what Hedi Slimane does. Like the Privée line, people in the fragrance community are always talking about that. The Celine stuff that Hedi Slimane does, that did in the past, so many people in the fragrance community talk about that. Like Black Tie, Reptile, Parade, Celine Parade. People always talk about that stuff. So I just don't really think the Bottega fragrance line is moving the needle. Of course it's new, but I just think the way they marketed it was also really, really weak. So once again, it just seems like they don't really know what they're doing when it comes to the beauty division. And they're so late to the whole thing. So that's one of the huge reasons why they need Hedi Slimane. Like a really big reason why they need him. So yeah, thank you very much guys for coming to my TED Talk. I have made my case for why I think Hedi Slimane is the man for the job. I don't really think necessarily he will go there. I just think that he should go there. And they should really consider him if they are not. Of course, there are loads of other options to go to Gucci. You have Pierpaolo Piccioli, who some people have said that, you know, he's a lock for Fendi. People have basically made it seem like he's basically at Fendi already. So there's that. You have Anderson, who people are saying that he's going to Dior. We'll see about that, but I guess Gucci could now be another option. But I guess the only issue with that is him being at Loewe means that there's a non-compete. So could he go to a Kering brand very quickly? Probably not. You have the likes of Kim Jones. He had massive success at Dior. I mean, he is very good at making products that sell. I think my only issue with Kim Jones is that I think he designs really good menswear, and he has a proven track record that his menswear sells. However, Kim Jones, I mean, when it comes to women's wear and his time at Fendi, his short time at Fendi showed that. I don't really think he can move the needle when it comes to women's wear. So I don't really know how that would work at Gucci. So there's that. And then also Kim Jones was at Dior, so non-compete once again. You have the likes of Riccardo Tisci, who was at Burberry not too long ago. Could he, go to Gucci and do some stuff there? You have the likes of Daniel Lee. People are saying that, he's going to go from Burberry to a few other brands. Some people are saying Jill Sander. So you have that. You also have the likes of John Galliano, who was just at Margiela, left shortly. People are saying that he's going to start his eponymous label. Is there a chance that he could go to Gucci and, make some noise at Gucci? I think the only issue with John Galliano is that John Galliano is a sensational designer, but a lot of his stuff doesn't sell. And with John Galliano, for him to work at a brand, you need really savvy business people that can help channel his creativity into products that sell. So that's why Dior was a match made in heaven, because you had him making like the Dior saddlebags and, all these things that went on to really sell big numbers. But at Kering, their business decisions are all out of whack. So you add John Galliano with his aesthetic, and I just don't think it would work commercially. I don't think it would do well financially. So there's that. I've also seen a lot of people talk about Maria Grazia Chiuri. People, of course, have said that she is leaving, and there's a rumor that literally she has a buyout. She's being bought out from Dior. I don't know if that's true or not. That's a rumor. Could she go to Gucci? I mean, she does sell. She sells really well, so a conversation can be had there with Maria Grazia Chiuri going to Gucci, but also non-compete. She's at Dior. Dior's under LVMH. Gucci is a Kering brand. So there's all of that, but those are all the other options from the top of my head that could work at Gucci. So there are many other options, but I definitely think that Hedi Slimane is definitely a name that, should be at the forefront of the conversation when it comes to who should go Gucci. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in terms of what I just said about Hedi Slimane and if you think he would work there. Okay, that's interesting. I haven't seen any of those conversations. They should start trading designers like footballers at this point. That's funny. Did someone say Kanye should go to Margiela? After Kanye's, he's already shown to be really problematic, but after Kanye's craziness in recent times on Twitter, I think let's just leave Kanye to be Kanye on his own. But yeah, this whole musical chairs where everyone is going everywhere has been a bit insane, especially in recent times. Riccardo Tisci does have that default Gucci type of aesthetic. Fairs. Not what? Riccardo Tisci is just concerned with taking pictures of Irina Shayk. That's crazy. That's insane. Okay, I guess people in the chat, okay, no one else has something. But yeah, shout out to Hedi Slimane. I am critical of Hedi Slimane a lot of times, but I do think that a lot of what he touches turns to gold. And that's why I'm a customer of Hedi Slimane. And I don't buy a lot of luxury stuff, like at all. But for some reason, the luxury stuff that I do buy, most of it has some connection to Hedi Slimane in one way or another. Especially when it comes to beauty products like fragrances and candles and diffusers and stuff. So yeah,